Welcome everybody to the second half of the second day, and looking forward to a very interesting session. This session is a perennial session where we focus on the issue of rural connectivity, but what I think is particularly inspiring about today's take on the subject is that we're not looking at the connectivity. We're not looking at the costs, we're not looking at the technologies. What we're looking at is the rural empowerment. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, we've got to ask a question. Question being, why is there all this fuss about rural connectivity? What's important about it? What are they going to do with this technology when they have it in the rural areas? What's the benefits to them? What can they do with this technology that they already do, where the technology can help them to do it better, quicker, faster, more efficiently? What else can they do that they can't currently do because of the technology? So we have an illustrious panel here today, and I'm very pleased to introduce each of them, or in fact to invite them to introduce themselves, which would be a much more effective approach. So if I can start, Onica, if I can invite you to introduce the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, because I know you from Alliance for Affordable Internet and from various other roles where you've advocated for improvements in connectivity, inequality, from various perspectives. So perhaps if you could just introduce yourself and your work that you're doing at the moment and how it relates to rural connectivity empowerment.
Great, thank you so much, Adrian. So Onica Makwakwa with the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership. We are the same team that brought you the Alliance for Affordable Internet. This is just our new reiteration. Our work focuses mainly on meaningful connectivity. We want to advance meaningful connectivity for the global majority, which is the areas where we have the most unconnected at the moment. We do a lot of research because we believe that we need evidence-based research in order to inform and influence policy and regulatory frameworks for advancing this meaningful connectivity that we talk about. And how we've defined meaningful connectivity is about raising the bar on how we define connected people. At the moment, ITU defines a connected person as someone who uses the internet once every 3 months. Very underwhelming. And so our definition is that being meaningfully connected is to be connected all the time with the right speed and the adequate device with access to unlimited data and ideally being able to use the internet on a daily basis if that's what you want to do. So we do a lot of work looking at research in terms of the unconnected and where the divides actually fall and how we are defining them. So for example, the gender digital gap is one of the areas that we are doing a lot of work in at the moment, but also this rural v urban divide and the growing divide, which is the divides that exist amongst the connected. Quality of connection is a big deal now, especially post-COVID. I think we do have COVID to thank a little bit for unearthing some of the divides, the inequalities, and making them more obvious for us, but also for helping to articulate the case for meaningful connectivity. So I'll pause there for now, and we'll come back to some of the issues, I'm sure.
Thanks for that, Onica. So you'll be able to guide us in the realms of policy and advocacy and how connected should be defined and what can be done to do that. So thank you very much. And then if I can ask Rakesh from iSAT Africa to give us a brief introduction of yourself and the company, and then we'll go to the questions a little bit after.
Thank you. iSAT Africa is a global Pan-African company with our head office from UAE, but all our operations, 100% are in Africa. We started from Africa, we learned from Africa, and that's why we want to give back all our learnings back in shape of technology and know-how back to land and people. We were always, for last 2 decades, we were in connectivity, and our passion was how we can connect the rural communities for better social and other impact. And this word impact always influenced us, and that passion of bringing the impact has changed our business model. So we developed a technical and commercial model that we work with mobile operators to expand their networks to the rural areas. And the key aspect that it was quite restrictive in Africa because of the high capital required, and also it was high operating expenses because further you go from major cities, your operating expenses go up. So we fine-tuned the technology in such a way that you don't need high capital by defining the right radios, software defined radios and others. We use all the renewable energy. We trained the local communities with their involvements. We brought down the operating expenses. But then we also realized there were other aspects, starting from inclusiveness from the local communities, user adoption for the new technologies which are coming. How do you communicate with a local community who has never used a mobile phone, and then we go and try to give them the advantage of smartphones, smart handsets, and that's where we saw the gap. So in different projects that we worked along with our MNO partners that include MTN, it includes Orange in different countries in Africa that we do today. We are doing in 5 countries with great success of expanding. So yeah, that's where we come from, trying to see how we can kill the hurdles of taking the right technology to people in rural areas.
Fantastic, Rakesh. Thank you very much. Albert. Albert, with the Universal Service Fund here in Tanzania, perhaps you can give us a brief introduction to yourself and the Universal Service Fund, and again, we'll go into the questions a little bit later.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Like you have introduced me, my name is Albert Richard. I'm Director of Operation from Universal Communication Service Access Fund. This is the government entity responsible to extend communication service in rural and urban underserved area. So since yesterday, when we were discussing about meaningful connectivity, sometimes it brings some sort of frustration because as of today, while we are sitting here, we have a number of villages or of people who are not even connected for the so-called 2G network. So while we are discussing here, I think it's important that we understand that frustration, maybe not only in the country, but even throughout the continent. Now, the government of the United Republic of Tanzania saw that this situation cannot continue like that. So in 2006, it passed the law to establish the Universal Communication Service Access Fund with the key mandate to extend communication service in rural and urban underserved area. And at this point in time, I should appreciate the participation of mobile communication companies in carrying that crucial exercise to make sure that our relatives, our friends who are living in rural areas also are connected. So as of today, the fund has extended communication service to about 1,700 village wards. And the recent project is the one which was witnessed by Her Excellency, the President Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, in May, whereby around 758 sites are going to be constructed throughout the country in 26 regions, in 127 districts. We believe that upon completion of these projects, around a population of 8.5 million people will be reached. So the impact, the empowerment we are going to bring to the people, at least will be meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert. So, and last but by no means least, we have Morenikeji Aniye, all the way from Nigeria, from Hotspot. If you don't mind if I call you Mo, just for brevity, please introduce yourself and what Hotspots are doing over there in Nigeria.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Morenikeji Aniye. I'm an engineer by profession. I'm the founder CEO of Hotspot Network Limited. We started as far back as 2012, and that's when we had the plan to go into rural digital inclusion. We started off as a co-location company in 2012. Then we migrated into rural communities to see how we can deepen the digital inclusion in rural communities. What we do is we connect the unconnected. We work as a network service provider in Nigeria, and we extend the MNOs as a network as a service to unconnected communities in Nigeria. So far, we've been able to connect about 80 villages in Nigeria as I speak to you on MTN network. And there's a plan to extend that to about 250 sites before the first quarter of next year in Nigeria. Connecting the unconnected, it's a very unique service that we offer, and we've been able to see how that has increased a lot of economic activities in the rural communities, how it has empowered women and youth in those rural communities, how bringing mobile connectivity to rural communities has been able to facilitate financial inclusion in those areas. Most of these villages have no banks of any sort, but with the expansion of rural mobile connectivity to these villages, we could see how the leverage on technologies, technologies, will be able to do banking activities. And we've been able to see how schools that have no form of connecting to the external world have been able to facilitate education through e-learning and all sorts of things. In the health sector too, we have seen how mobile communications have revolutionized how the health workers work in that communities. So we've been able to see how we bring happiness to the lives of rural dwellers in Nigeria, which is one of the reasons why we do it. We do it for impact. At the same time, we make money too. And the COVID has shown to us that there is need for mobile connectivities going forward. And it has shown us that we should not lose guards. Now that COVID is gone, we should now revolutionize digital connectivity and increase the number of unconnected communities. And that's how government can lift people out of poverty. There's so much that can be done, and there's so much that is happening, and we still want to take it to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Actually, you answered my next question in large part there, which is, why on earth are we doing this? Why are we putting all this time and effort in? I'm going to be the voice of the MNO again here for a moment. If I'm going to have to invest my money in expanding my networks and impress my shareholders, why am I going to spend that money into a rural area? What do they actually need this connectivity for? And I'm going to ask Onica first to given that you're talking in terms of meaningful connectivity as being something we should be aiming towards, what are they going to do with it when they get it?
I actually like what Morenikeji said. He said, bring happiness. I think we underestimate this notion that people must go online to do this deep stuff, right? But at the very basic level of it, I think there's a young boy whose story I love to tell from South Africa in one of the townships, who was interviewed about why he walks so far to get to the nearest hotspot in order for him to connect. And it would get him in trouble, obviously, because he comes home late and all of that. And his answer was very simple. He said, I live in a shack, but when I'm online, I no longer live in a shack. And I'm going to repeat that. He says, I live in a shack, but when I'm online, I no longer live in a shack. This is really about giving people an opportunity to transform their lives. And the people who are offline today are probably the ones who need the connectivity the most in order to experience that kind of life transformation. A few days ago, I posted something on Facebook about an ad that has been going around. I'm sure many of you have seen this ad about 10 classes at Harvard University that you can take for free. And this ad has been going on Facebook for quite some time. But what's sad is that in this continent, only 2 out of 3 people will ever be able to see this ad. So I actually clicked on this to go and look at, how real is this could be a scam and what kind of classes are they really offering. And it just blew my mind. The fact that we have university level courses that people can actually take and learn so much, including Introduction to Computing, by the way, is one of the courses being offered there. So yes, people should be able to go online because we are digitizing at a speed faster than we actually have people. Part of the reason why the continent has a usage gap is that we have not invested so much in the demand side issues right now. So they are going online to check on their health, to stay connected to their families, to communicate, to learn, to grow, to run businesses. A lot of market women during COVID lockdown were able to still sell their wares by being able to send pictures via WhatsApp and get people to still place orders. In fact, many of us, post-COVID, are still not going to the grocery store at the rate at which we were going. We're still having our groceries delivered. We are still ordering our eggs from the farmer who's willing to deliver from us, and all facilitated through this connectivity. So it's not just about playing on social media, even though that's important, because we are not going to have a hierarchy of, happiness is not important. Happiness is important, so people should be online because it's also a form of entertainment for the same reason some people have televisions in their homes. They are getting news through being online, but most importantly, they are having an opportunity to learn a new skill, to earn a living, to take care of their health as well. Almost every government produced some kind of a tracking app for COVID or COVID reporting, yet kind of forgot that not everyone could access this information in order to make sure that they stay safe and they have the information on how to do so. So it can be deep, as far as saving lives, but it also doesn't have to be that deep. That's where we are. People are connecting through being online.
Good point, Onica. Thank you. Rakesh, I think there was a ripple of applause there. Rakesh, iSAT have almost developed their business around rural connectivity, so you must, from a commercial perspective, have seen it as a viable business. Let's forget about the nice things about it. Let's think about the money side of it. You've seen it as a commercially viable opportunity. What was it about rural connectivity that you saw as viable that perhaps the reason why it isn't as abundant as it is, other people haven't noticed?
I'll just share the first project that we did. This project was funded by DFID. They wanted to learn more about self-sustainability of these rural sites. They wanted to see the viability about technology, how it works, and they wanted to show that case study to mobile operators that it's not that difficult as you claim. We were given a area of North Uganda, which is National Park, where they identified 5 different villages by saying these are the areas that we like to connect. We did all kind of survey from the government books and records. We found that everybody believes that there are less than 1,000 people in each village that they live. And obviously there's no business plan behind it, because if you take the user penetration of 20%, you probably will have 200 SIM cards. Less than $2 ARPU does not give you enough to run a site in a rural area. And that's where I like to place it in a different business plan altogether. Though our proposal is a low cost and low operating expense and fully remotely manageable to make sure that we do. But the end results happen to be very different. we realized that users were not ready to buy the handsets or the SIM cards unless they find that it touches their life, as well as it brings some kind of improvements. Demonstrating them that you can make a phone call was not good enough, because the chief of the village told us that all his family lives here, whom should he call? And that's why he doesn't feel that aliens should come to his village and put some technology that he does not gain from. So we went into different kind of sessions, and we realized that we have to bring the different applications rather than just selling the telecom services. So the first, which was economic way, that particular village used to create handmade some crafts which you can use it in your kitchen, or you can use it as a souvenir to be given to others. And these people, those who were making it, possibly they were selling less than $2 to the people who used to come once in 3 months, pick it up, go and sell in Kampala, and possibly Kampala sells it to the rest of the world. They were not even getting $2 for it. We took those pictures, we tried to create some kind of a e-commerce or a website for them, and we placed the value of $10, and it was very surprisingly that they started getting people to come and buy. The second thing which was very important for these guys to tell the rest of the world where they exist, because in some of the villages there was no roads, obviously nobody knows where the village is, but now putting the coordinates onto Google Maps, people could drive into. So slowly they realized that it was not a phone call, it was being connected. It was how my able friend madam told us that is just bringing these rural communities to the main fold and giving them the confidence that they exist and we care, and the government policies can be applied. There were a lot of subsidies which were going to these villages, but they were never reaching them because there was no process of going to them and enabling that. Now coming to the commercial side of it, very surprisingly, within 4th month of launch of these, we got 25,000 unique SIM cards associated with these sites, where we were expecting less than 1,000. And the reason was that there was a lot of business trading which used to happen, but in a transit. People don't live there, but they transit from there. There is a lot of volunteers in NGOs. There were a lot of political activities which were happening. And that was making all these sites very profitable today, though most of the government record shows that there's not enough people. So the moment you create the real applications and the local users start using it, that tower is not a telecom tower, it is the center of your economy that starts rotating towards it.
Very good, Rakesh. Very interesting and eye-opening in terms of build it and they will come kind of philosophy, which I think is something that should be considered. So Albert, from a government perspective, you've got a tough job. You've got to convince the operators that they should be working with you to make those connections, and me as my MNO hat, you've got to convince me that I should make that investment, as well as out of the good of my heart and my CSR policies to make me look good. Why else do you must have, through the work that you've done already, seen some upliftment from initial installations that have been put into those rural areas. Can you give us any examples of success stories?
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Maybe I can give you one story. I think in 2016, we were in Parliament session. Then a member of Parliament was complaining about the lack of communication service in one of the villages from where she's coming. And then she said she had to climb a tree to have access to communication service. And bad enough, the information she received is that her daughter, who was sick, passed away. So you can imagine to have a parliament maybe with the 300 members of parliament listening to that story, and everybody kept quiet. So it was like maybe for us, without connecting them, maybe we, in one way or another, we contributed to the death of that little girl. So what operators, what the government is doing, or what other stakeholders are doing, it's not only for business, however, we are empowering our people. The lady from Tigo said about financial inclusion. When we roll out those networks in rural areas, it means we make sure that those people who at first never had bank accounts, then now they are financial included. It means they can store their funds through their mobile phones, they can spend, they can send to their loved one. Apart from communication, one of my day-to-day jobs at my workplace is to ensure that we respond to issues which are brought from social medias. Nowadays, what the public have found in order to accelerate that they get communication service, they will ask the member of place to go to their village, which is completely not covered, and then they will record that situation. In the other day, we were with Airtel in Morogoro, in the area called Matul. They've identified one big tree, they call it communication tree. One big tree where they will hang out some mobile phones so that if you move away from that spot, then you will not be reached. So upon extending communication to that village, villagers were happy, and which means now, apart from communication service, those guys will have access to Airtel Man, they will have access to information. It means before even sending their crops from the village, they can have access to marketplace. They will know even the price. They will know even to whom they are going to send those crops. So it is really empowering the community. And even we are doing, my brother says that we bring happiness to life. Those people in village also, they need to have access to Netflix. They need to have access to social media, which their counterpart in town, they are having. How are they going to have if we do not have the meaningful communication? Rakesh has said here that they even have designed a solution which will address it is a low-cost solution, which means it can address even the smallest population behind the hill, 200 people, 300 people, which means while we are connecting the village, it means we cannot leave anyone behind. We can even connect even the smallest population to make sure the entire country is connected, and then through that we can empower our people. Thanks.
Okay, very good, Al. Thank you for that. So, Mo, I know as well as you do how difficult it is to attract investment for infrastructure builds into rural areas. I know also that the MNOs, they want to do revenue share models, towercos want long-term investment models. How do you convince your partners, your investors, your MNO colleagues, what do you show them from a commercial perspective, as well as the happiness that they'll bring? What's the angle that you take that can, if we had a room full today of investors, of towercos, of MNOs, how do you tell them that this is something that we should do because it makes commercial sense?
Yeah, thank you very much. The financial model for rural communities are quite very unique, and for us it was quite intentional for us to go to rural communities. So we did a lot of financial model. Apparently before we even signed with MTN, we did almost about 14 financial models that would keep going back and forth, trying to put a lot of iterations. Now, the uniqueness of rural communities is there. 50% of the people that live in rural communities, they engage in farming. So now there's need for connectivity for the farmers to be able to connect to the outside world. They need information. Most importantly, our tower assets are classified as ESG assets. So it's very easy for us to look at our assets from that angle and talk to the investors. That's number one. Number two, for us, you cannot run a rural telephone network with a commercial loan. It's quite impossible because the interest rate is high. Now, what we do is we go for blended finance. We use blended financing whereby we work with organizations that can give us opportunity to access climate funds at a very good rate. And we try to do a lot of, we work with, like in Nigeria now, we have a lot of villages that actually don't have telecom infrastructure. At the same time, there's no power. So we've been able to swing up a lot of programs whereby we partner the mini grid operators to go to a specific village, and we as a telecom infrastructure will be their anchor tenant for the mini grid operator. So by that, we are reducing our exposure, we are reducing our CapEx by being an off-taker of the mini grid. Now the mini grid provide power to the communities, at the same time we provide telecom infrastructure. So that association is working very well. And with that special project, we approached AFDB and Rural Electrification Agency in Nigeria, which were able to get access to about 40% grant on about 25 location deployment. So that has actually reduced our exposure and how we are going to deploy rural communities. So we're open to a lot of blended opportunities whereby we can have access to grants and have access to a long-term loan, about 7 years, 10 years. You know, we do a lot of bond, bid bonds and a lot of other things. Also in Nigeria, we work with a company called InfraCredit that de-risks our exposure to Forex so that we don't get unnecessarily exposed to Forex, because if you borrow money in dollars and how are you going to pay back because of the Forex issues that we're having in Nigeria? So we try to limit our exposure in that area. So we talk to our investors, they look at our financial models, where we're going to break even, how much access to grants do we have, how much of our own personal money have we been able to put into it, and how effectively can we manage the communities. Because it boils down to how you make your money in the community. So it has to do with access to fund for the rural dwellers to be able to have access to phones, which is a program on its own, and how we are able to create an ecosystem around the villages whereby you build your tower infrastructures, then you create a solar kiosk that can give room to something like a rural mall, like a digital center whereby the villagers can come in and do a lot of digital activities. So that creates that enabling environment for them to be able to use the phone itself. So we try to get a lot of programs around how the farmers can have access to phone, have access to information, how we can create a CUG platform whereby the farmers can talk to them with a fixed rate in a month. So we are very innovative. Because that's how you can break even in rural communities. Being creative with our funding, being creative with our marketing and our deployment plan, it's very unique.
Mo, that's again very insightful, and I think we need more people like you to drive and have the heart to drive those kind of initiatives, because it takes heart as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Onica, just one quick question before I ask the audience if they've got anything they'd like to ask. Is there any evidence that lowering prices increases usage to enable an expansion of services that are affordable?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research around the issue of affordability. In fact, we used to produce an affordability index looking at about 148 countries globally. And we can, I think, comfortably say that one of the biggest contributors to people not using the internet has been affordability. In almost all of the research we've done, affordability is usually at the top. Of course, there's the issue of skills, but it's affordability both of the internet to access it, but also affordability of the devices to be able to get online. And I have seen a lot of work on the affordability of devices, but I think it's a little frustrating that majority of that work so far relies on financing heavily. So the reality of it is that when you're talking about a continent where you've got quite a number of people who are still living on less than $2 per day, financing actually becomes a solution that doesn't necessarily reduce the price, but it just enables people to be able to afford over time. It just stretches how long they can pay, and it has its own set of challenges, right? And I think what we need is regulators that can begin to look at this both from a market point of view, but also from a consumer protection point of view. We can't heavily rely on consumers having to finance devices in order to afford them. We have not done enough to explore local assembly and such. I mean, I think we've got 1 or 2 examples in a continent of 54 countries around how do we really bring down affordability. Also, import duty. I think we did this research with Ghana and Mozambique, where there is a 25% import duty tax on smart devices into the country. And basically, what happens in Ghana is that they just go to Nigeria and buy their devices there and then come and activate them in Ghana. So there's a loss in having, in overtaxing the sector so quickly. It actually will slow down the growth, and we need to see some smart taxation conversations between ministries of finance and ministries of communications, so that we are not forestalling the growth of the sector. But just one more thing that I wanted to bring up, with regards to rural areas especially. I think we have to be open to both different digital technologies for connecting the unconnected, but I think we have reached a point where we must also talk about different financial models. And I really like what you just shared. And this brings the issue of community networks. We might be uncomfortable with the idea of community networks, but when we've had a sector that has said it is commercially not viable for us to service these people, there is a responsibility from the regulators' point of view and the USFs to find a different financial model to connect the unconnected. And so far, we've got evidence that community network areas that have community networks actually have a higher meaningful connectivity score. And there's other smart ways of providing that connectivity through subsidizing them with the USFs. We need to really start using our USFs very smartly. In this continent in particular. We've done an audit of USFs in Africa specifically, and we're actually quite shocked at how many of them don't do audits, still have funds sitting, or the funds are not necessarily deployed and used the way that they should be. These are funds that are meant to close these divides, and community networks are really making a difference in countries like South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and that also requires conversations around releasing spectrum to be able to support these kinds of communities where we've said it's commercially not viable. They actually help slow down rural to urban migration. So if you care about the urban areas, you must also know that the rural to urban migration can be burdensome to urban areas. So why not provide urban areas the similar level of connectivity that you are providing in the urban areas as a way of resolving some of those issues too?
Great, thank you, Onica. I think we can all agree that closing the digital divide requires passion, and we've heard a lot of passion on this stage and some inspiring stories, so thank you to the panel. Madam, do we have time for any quick questions from the audience?
Question. Sorry, it's me again. Hi guys, Bradley Shaw here again. I don't need to stand up. So, just Onica, I'm sorry, I completely disagree with you. There are no villages that are uneconomically viable. You just have the wrong solution for that village. Connectivity can be put everywhere. And then in terms of pricing, I'd love to hear Rakesh and Mo's view on reducing pricing for the MNO, because them as infrastructure partners doing revenue share deals with the MNOs, they keep reducing prices, the infrastructure partners earn less. So Mo, Rakesh, what are you doing in terms of dealing with that potential risk of price floors or kind of the prices dropping and your sites becoming uneconomical?
Well, thank you. You like to put me on the spot. Well, on pricing reduction, are you talking about the airtime? Yes. For us, I think in Nigeria, when there's going to be a price reduction, it's something we sit down with them because we have an agreement with them. For us, we have like 10 years revenue share agreement with MTN. So for us, first of all, we discuss internally and we agree on the way forward. But they cannot just arbitrarily wake up in the middle of anything and start changing the price, because it's going to have a ripple effect on our own funding structure, on our own capex, and on our own investment. So likewise, if they want to increase price too, they have to talk to us. So well, we've not had that issue now, and we've not really had that, so I can't really say how it's going to swing, because once we have a conflict of interest, we have to sit down, we'll go back and forth, then we have an agreement on whatever we give for. But specifically, I cannot really say this is what we are going to do, because we've not had that issue. Yeah.
I agree with all the panelists, but I personally feel the airtime charges or the cost to the end user is not the only stumbling block that we should be worried and concerned about. Some of the things that we have done differently, we went to some of the villages in South Sudan and we realized charging the phones was the major stumbling block. So first thing that we did along with the tower, we created a kiosk where people can come and charge their mobile phones. So we call it EnergyCo. We also realized that there's a lot more that can be done through that kiosk. So we created a distribution co where a lot of people use that infrastructure to bring and do the distribution. We tied up with some of the leading brands of the handsets. We requested them to launch some of the handsets which are meant for rural of Africa. So if you notice, Nokia has a 2G, 3G handsets which says Africa version. And we could manage to secure those handsets less than $10. We went to the government of South Sudan. They helped us to give the zero duty, provided all the goods are going to the rural areas. And this is how we work with the whole ecosystem to drive down the stumbling blocks. Yes, driving down the cost of the airtime can destabilize the whole ecosystem, because people, those who are trying to take the share, they will try to cut the share of others. So instead of destabilizing the current system, we thought we should enable a little bit more of an ecosystem. The kiosks that we have created, we have taken 3 or 4 of those kiosks and created a telecenter which can give you telehealth and many other teleservices. So recently we have connected some of the telecenters to hospital in Nairobi so that people can consult the doctor over video conference to the doctor sitting in a big hospital in Nairobi. We are just trying to see how that infrastructure which has been built is not only for telecom but also for everything else required, just to make sure that the contribution is much bigger piece of cake than. So that's where the social impact that I was talking about is able to help us.
I agree with you. There are no communities that are commercially not viable, but that's what we hear from operators most of the time. What we have to be open to is different digital technologies as well as a different financial model to connect those areas where we've been told it's not commercially viable, because they do exist. There are communities where the network operators haven't gone, but the ISPs might be there. But there's a lot of conversation around that, but it's not just going to take a different technology. It's also going to take a willingness and a political will, mostly, to want to connect the unconnected, which requires more of an inclusive economic outlook as opposed to a commercial one at the moment.
Sorry, no, I think I should say now, we have areas which are economic and viable. That's why even the government is trying to subsidize, so that at least the operator can have, after a certain period of time, can have that net present value. Since if from day zero you do not subsidize, then it means they will be running on loss for a certain period of time. So it's, yeah, we can say, that's why I think Oka is saying that we need different financial models to address the same market. Thanks.
We can take the discussion offline. Thanks, Brad. Yeah.
So this has been a fantastic panel. A lot of energy for the second half of the second day of the C2C summit, and I think we've done the subject matter justice. I'm inspired by the stories I've heard, by the passion that I've felt from the panelists on the stage. So Mo, Albert, Rakesh, and Onica, thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for staying with us, and I hope you've enjoyed the panel.
And thanks, Adrian, for a fantastic panel. A big round of applause, please, for the whole panel, for bringing up the very important issue of rural empowerment. Before we switch to the next panel, we want to pick up on this theme, which is just